Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another episode of Theater Experience, the video series where I talk about films that I've seen in the theater. Either films that I have been meaning to watch that I haven't gotten around to, and I see that they're playing on the big screen, so I'm like, hey, let's go watch them. Or films that I love and enjoy and am taking the time to see on the big screen to mark it off the list. Today's film is one of those ones. It is a film that I've loved ever since childhood. It is, of course, the 80s horror comedy written by Shane Black and Fred Dekker, The Monster Squad. Now, before I get too far into this, in case anyone's wondering why the lighting's a little weird here, I'm recording this in the car as I'm driving home from the showing. I have the camera set up on the thing. Don't worry, it's not that bad of a multitasking thing to do. My hands are free. I'm talking while I have my eyes on the road. If there's anything weird where I have to stop quickly, I can always edit it out later. So, in case anyone's wondering, like, what the hell is he doing? Now, first of all, after that, the whole screening, I had a big smile on my face. That should tell you how well this showing went. It was a fun theater experience because I love this film. I adore this film. And just seeing it on the big screen with a handful of fans, and I mean a handful of fans, maybe there was, other than me, there was maybe 10 people in the theater at the most, which is kind of a flip from seeing another 80s classic, The Blob, on the big screen. But then that was in LA and 35mm, so that's going to be the trade-off, especially since it was at New Beverly, whereas this one is at a local multiplex. Now, I say local because it's a short drive away from where I live, but it's not exactly right next door to where I live. Because I had to drive to Corona, the city I was born in, which from where I live is about 20 miles away by freeway, give or take. Whereas the theaters I normally go to are either 3 to 8 miles away from where I live, depending on which one I have to go to. The Regal one being the 8 miles. So it's a longer drive than normal, but not as long as LA. I mean, the there and back trip is 2/3 of the way to LA one way, so still save a gas. I'm not going to explain the plot of this film in detail. As I said, this is not a review. But basically, kids have to save the world from monsters by preventing them from destroying this ancient amulet. And if the monsters destroy it, the world will be plunged into darkness and the creatures of the night will rule the world. Got that? It's basically, to explain it in a shorthand way, it's Goonies, but if they had to fight monsters instead of mobsters. And there's no treasure. And the kid actors, they do a good job with the material they're given. They were funny. Just listening to all the lines that were said in this movie, it's like there's so many classic one-liners in this. To name a couple, how do you say "don't kill me" in German? I don't know how to say it in German, but the guy says it. And then, of course, one of my favorite little bits. All right, children, time is almost up. Low angle facing him. Cuts to him cutting a piece of pie. It is your last chance for pie. This makes it look like he actually is going to kill him. Then, of course, the dad being a cop and his partner is such a crack up. And then, of course, it leads to one of my favorite lines in the movie. 2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves. Cut to the mommy walking across the street. And stuff like that make this classic of horror comedy. Definitely would be on the top 10 horror comedies list. And it is the mashup of the monsters that we horror fans needed. Now, it's not as serious as some of the Universal horror films were, even when they were at their B-movie budget and weren't keeping with continuity. They still approached it with a semi-serious manner. Here, there is some seriousness, and that's where the comedy comes in to balance things. I mean, the stakes in this movie are serious. It's just they approach it with a mindset that, you know, is typical of the 80s. This could work now as a throwback. I mean, you got movies like Wolf Cop that are made now, so if you would approach it with that mentality, it could work as a new film nowadays. But it is atypical of the time period it was made in the 80s. And I think a lot of the lines show that. And of course, the characters are stock. I mean, you got the fat kid, you got the bullies, you got the kid that's basically a middle school version of the Fonz. Hey! You got the parents who are going through marital troubles. Now that one adds a little bit of drama to the house, but doesn't really pay off with anything. It's just there to add some complex drama to the people's lives before the monsters show up. And given that the dad's a cop, it makes sense. Not all cop marriages are going to be 100% hunky-dory, especially if you have long hours and stuff. I do like the little scene where they poke fun at the constant slasher sequels, mostly the Halloween and Friday the 13th sequels. That always got a chuckle out of me. The monster effects from Stan Winston are still excellent to look at. They were magnificent in the 80s and they have aged very well. Now, certain aspects of the Wolfman one do look a little dated, to use the proper term, but they still look excellent. The Gilman special effects still look top-notch, and of course, the subtle makeup they put on Dracula is excellent, and the actor that portrays him, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he does an excellent job of portraying not only how sophisticated, but how badass the Prince of Darkness is. As James Rolfe, the Angry Video Game Nerd, said in one of his Christopher Lee Dracula films, the reviews of him, I should say, Dracula is the pimp of the undead, and that sums up the performance here. If you want to see just how much of a badass pimp he is, watch the scene near the end where the cops try taking him out. He just takes him out one by one, punches one, grabs one by the arm and breaks it. You watch that, you're like, ooh yeah, he's gonna kick ass. Tom Noonan of Manhunter and RoboCop 2 fame as the Frankenstein monster. He does an excellent job. And seeing it in his performance on the big screen combined with the musical score, which is another thing excellent about this movie, is its music. So hearing it out of a theater surround sound was a treat. And that is one of the reasons why from the get-go I had a big old smirk on my face. Because watching it, I'm like, oh, I'm in for a fun time. And then rewatching it for the first time in a couple years, I forgot how quick-paced this movie is. It's not even, it's a little over 80 minutes. And it goes by pretty quickly. This is how you pace a short film properly. It goes by, should I say, shorter film properly. Now, I know there was some deleted scenes, which I could see why they were cut, but a couple of them would have been interesting to see in the film, but I understand why they're not there. The only thing this film was missing was an introduction by the director or by a couple of the actors. But, you know, it's not a experience killer. It was kind of a last-minute decision to come to see this movie. I was kind of, you know, like, should I go see it? Should I not? But then what ultimately won out is like, well, it's one of my favorite films from childhood, and when are they ever going to be playing it again in a theater that's a short drive from me? So I'm like, fuck it. So I went and saw it. And as you see, I had a lot of fun. If you do ever have the opportunity to see Monster Squad on the big screen, I'd say take it, because it is a delight. It is a very fun film. I know some people probably say cheesy or campy, and I will admit that there is a little bit of that vibe here because of the humor involved, but it's in the good variety. There is some meta humor here, considering that not only do the monsters exist in the universe that's depicted, but they are, you know, marketed like how they are in real life. I mean, Frankenstein masks. People talk about the characters like a couple of them existed, and then other ones like they don't exist. They're just fictional creatures. So it's a weird little universe, but the way they present it, it works. And the kids are monster fans, so I think that's what made me love the film as a kid, and it just makes me love it even more now. And watching it on the big screen, I noticed some details I didn't notice before. Like, I didn't notice the Godzilla poster on the wall in the clubhouse. Never noticed that before. I noticed some of the other ones, but not that one, which is kind of a shame since they mentioned Godzilla by name in the film, and I myself am a Godzilla fan, so you think I would have noticed that the first couple times I watched the movie. But no, it just went over my head. And another thing I never noticed, I guess because I never read the credits in depth, was that the Gillman is played by Tom Woodruff Jr., the guy who would play the alien itself in a lot of the sequels from 3 onwards. So nice to see where he got some of his start in here. And now that I noticed that, I'm like, okay, that explains some of the body movement. So it was nice to see that. I guess I should have figured it out earlier. I mean, it is Stan Winston who did the effects, so it makes sense that Tom Woodruff would be in there somewhere. Now, if you've only seen Night of the Creeps, the humor and love letter to horror films that's in that film is also in this one. So, you know what you're getting when you get into this. And the way that the monsters are all depicted as teaming up in this film, this is the type of monster mash that fans back in the day of these films, back in their heyday, wish that they could have gotten. I mean, back in the day when there was no home video and the only time you could see a movie is when it was released and then re-released later on. So the way that they presented the monsters on screen might have been disappointing to a few of them, but they enjoyed it nonetheless. And just from the tidbits I've seen of those films, they do look enjoyable. But it's not the type of monster mash most people would envision when they see a trailer and see, well, Dracula, the Frankenstein monster, and the Wolfman are going to be all in one movie? I can't wait to see that. This is more in line, where they're all on the same team and they got to be stopped. Now, in a more classic film, it would be adults doing it, but it's a nice little twist that it's kids doing it. Like I said, it's in the vein of Goonies. Like I mentioned, the musical score in passing, it is excellent. But what also is good is the original songs that were written for the film. Rock Until You Drop, which is used in the montage scene where they're getting ready to go fight the monsters. Another thing that shows this is an 80s film is that it has a montage set to contemporary music, and it's a works thing. Rock Until You Drop, dance until your feet fall. I love that song and the way it's used. And then, of course, the Monster Squad theme at the end that basically summarizes the whole plot of the film. It's catchy in its own right. And the one thing I like is that Horace, who is the stereotypical fat kid, does get a good moment where he defeats the Gill Man. Spoiler alert. Where the bullies come out and congratulate him. And then he's like, "My name is Horace," cocks the shotgun. The visual effects are also pretty good, and it was a wonder to see them on the big screen. A couple of them, they have aged a little bit, just a tad, but it adds to the 80s charm of the film, especially with the meta tongue-in-cheek. Especially with the meta humor involved here. Especially with the type of humor involved in the film, it balances out. That's part of the reason why I don't really complain about the obviously fake bats we see at the beginning of the film. Maybe I might have noticed them before, but seeing this movie on the big screen, you really notice them. I think they probably could have done better jobs in the 80s, but I think they might have done them the way they were in this film intentionally, as kind of a homage to the old Universal films with the very bad looking fake bats. But at least they did a good job with the Dracula bat. That animatronic bat looks excellent. You can tell it's not a real bat, but it also has that monstrous quality where you're like, okay, I think that's supposed to be a vampire bat. And there's nothing else to say about the film. If you do have the chance to see it on the big screen, go for it. And if not, and you haven't seen it, you can watch it on the small screen. Buy the DVD on Amazon, rent it. It is a fun monster watch. You're definitely gonna be laughing a lot of the one-liners while enjoying the tense moments in the practical effects.